Hakimi, and today I present to you my research on the effects of open book, closed book, and crib sheet quizzes on anxiety, performance, and retention. In the 21st century, the stress levels of high school students are sky high. One factor that contributes to the stress of these students is the pressure of colleges becoming increasingly more competitive and having lower acceptance rates. Acceptance rates at elite colleges have been decreasing. For example, the class of 2001 admission to Harvard rate was 12.3%. 20 years later, for the class of 2020, Harvard's rate decreased to merely 5.2%. In addition, students in high school are tested with tremendous frequency, and unfortunately, many suffer from test anxiety. The problem this study investigated was whether test anxiety and stress can be decreased and learning increased by altering the test environment. The current testing environment may be contributing to student stress and anxiety. The popular way of testing currently and in the past is by a closed book examination in which students do not have access to their learning materials during the examination. However, there are test format alternatives such as open book and crib sheet, also known as cheat sheet, exams, which may cause students less anxiety. So this study took place in 3 sections of an AP psychology course in which there were 64 students. Students took a series of 3 quizzes as well as a follow-up retention quiz. The 3 initial quizzes occurred in a rotation in which every student saw every format of the quizzes. For example, for the first quiz, period 3 had the open book condition. For the second, they had the crib sheet condition, and for the third, they had the closed book condition. These quizzes were all in the same unit of developmental psychology and all had the same level of difficulty. Every quiz consisted of 15 multiple choice and 1 short answer question. The following retention quiz consisted of 15 multiple choice questions in which there were 5 questions from each initial quiz. So basically, the quiz began with the anxiety measures and the demographics, and then there were 15 multiple choice questions that were each worth 2 points and 1 short answer question that was worth 12 points. In the follow-up retention quiz, there were simply 15 multiple choice questions that added up to a total of 30 points. And there were 5 questions that were randomly selected from each quiz to be put onto that last quiz. So basically, the dependent measure that was used to measure the anxiety of the students, they took the state trait anxiety inventory, which is a scale ranging from 1 to, which was labeled not all, to 4 very much for every question. So basically, I hypothesized, based on my background literature, that students would report less anxiety on the crib sheet and open book conditions in comparison to the closed book conditions. Students will perform better on a crib sheet quiz compared to when they take a closed book or open book quiz, and students will perform similarly on an open book and closed book retention quiz. So this study also introduces and examines the effect of question type, multiple short answer, and performance. So basically, overall, students perform the best on the crib sheet quiz with the open book and closed book quizzes following, although this was not statistically significant. However, an effect size of 5% was observed, meaning that the quiz affected 5% of the population, which shows that there is some impact, especially when you look at the scores. Obviously, a GPA of 83 is considered higher than a GPA of a 78. They're not considered the same in terms of college acceptance process and in general. In terms of the multiple choice performance, students performed the best on the crib sheet condition and the worst on the closed book condition, although these were not significant. There was again a 6% effect size. And in terms of short answer, students performed the best in the open book condition and the worst in the closed book condition. This produced effect of 4%. And this would actually make sense because for short answer, you have a lot of information to write when you have your notes right in front of you. So in terms of anxiety, there was reported the same level of anxiety on the open book and crib sheet quizzes and a slightly higher level of anxiety on the closed book quiz. This was not statistically significant. However, there was an effect size of 5%, which could indicate that there's a possibility that the closed book exam does cause more anxiety for some students. And in terms of retention, which was the new aspect brought into the study, students retained the most information on the questions they originally saw in the closed book condition. However, these were not significant, but had the largest effect size throughout the study of 7%, which means that the crib sheet could actually be a compromise. You know, the open book makes them remember too little, but the crib sheet and closed book were very close and comparable, so it's possible that in the future crib sheet could be used as a middle ground for possibly reducing anxiety and also having almost the same level of retention of information. So there are many reasons for why the results that occurred could not have been statistically significant, as it was difficult to obtain a sample that met the criteria for the study. However, the results of the study are meaningful, indicating that it is possible that students do actually face less anxiety in the crib sheet quiz while almost performing the highest. Thank you for listening to my presentation.